We've all met them. Or, hey, maybe we are them. I'm talking about people who seem to apologize for their very existence. They'll say sorry to a chair they bump into. It's a really common habit, but it's also deeply misunderstood. So today, we're going to unpack the real psychology behind saying I'm sorry for, well, everything.
I mean, have you ever found yourself saying sorry when someone else bumps into you? Or maybe apologizing for asking a totally reasonable question? If that sounds even a little familiar, you know just how automatic it can feel. But this isn't just about being polite. It goes way deeper.
So on the surface, it's easy to look at this and think, oh, that's just a lack of confidence, or maybe even see it as a weakness. But what's really going on is so much more complex. Over-apologizing isn't some kind of personality flaw. It's actually a protective reflex, a survival strategy that your brain probably developed a long, long time ago.
Okay, so let's start with the first big psychological driver here, the need for control. We're going to see how a simple "I'm sorry" becomes this tool your brain uses to try and manage an unpredictable world and create a feeling of safety, even if it's a false one.
Think about it. When life feels chaotic or a social situation feels a little tense, your brain just scrambles to find some way to create order. And by preemptively apologizing, by taking the blame for something, literally anything, you're trying to neutralize a potential conflict before it even has a chance to start. So here's how that lightning-fast logic plays out in your head. First, your brain senses even a tiny hint of potential conflict. Next, it shoots out an apology to be the first one to act. The goal? To diffuse any perceived anger, whether it's actually real or just imagined. And in that split second, by taking all the responsibility, you create an immediate, though, false, sense of control.
But this need for control isn't happening in a vacuum. It's actually being fueled by this internal wiring that is incredibly sensitive. Let's dive into what that means, because we're talking about a mind that isn't just aware, it's hyper-aware.
And that brings us to a really key concept: hyperactive self-awareness. Now, this is so much more than just being self-conscious. This is like having a high-level, constant monitoring system running in the background. You're analyzing your own words, your tone, how you're sitting, and trying to figure out how other people are perceiving you, all in real time. It is absolutely exhausting, and it makes you constantly second-guess every single interaction.
And it's not just about what you're putting out. It's also about what you're taking in. This is called emotional contagion. It means you don't just notice that someone is tense, you actually absorb it. You feel their stress in your own body. So you apologize to try and fix their mood, because honestly, it's the fastest way you know to calm your own nervous system.
So the big question is, where does all of this come from? Well, for a lot of people, the blueprint for this behavior was drawn up way back in childhood. The "I'm sorry" habit is very often a learned response to the environment you grew up in.
Just think about it for a second. If you were constantly criticized as a kid, or if the emotional atmosphere at home was super unstable, your brain did what it had to do to survive. It learned that accepting blame, whether you deserved it or not, was the quickest way to de-escalate things and feel safe. You probably started to believe that something was just inherently wrong with you.
And that right there is exactly how a childhood coping mechanism turns into an adult reflex. Apologizing was the tool that kept you emotionally safe back then. The tricky part is that whole belief system just quietly followed you right into adulthood, long after the original threat was gone. Now, while this habit comes from a place of protection, it has a very real cost. This constant need to please and appease people means you often end up hiding your own needs, all in an effort to feel secure in your relationships.
So let's just lay out these hidden costs. It starts with hiding what you truly need, because you're terrified of being seen as a burden. So you make yourself smaller, easier to keep around. But that also makes you easier to overlook. This turns into a constant search for approval, where you feel like you have to earn your spot in every relationship instead of just believing you deserve to be there. And the results of all this? It is emotionally exhausting.
So let's pull all these threads together. It is so important to reframe this behavior not as a weakness, but for what it actually is, a powerful and once very necessary survival instinct.
This is probably the most important thing I want you to take away today. Your mind is not broken. It is not working against you. Every single one of these reflexes, the apology, the self-monitoring, the people-pleasing, it's all your brain's attempt to protect you from what it sees as a threat, all based on things you learned in the past. So please, hear this. Over-apologizing is not a character flaw. It's a survival strategy. And like any strategy, it can be updated. It was a tool that might have served you incredibly well in the past, but it might have just outlived its purpose now.
And understanding that, well, that's the first real step toward changing it.
So I'll leave you with this to chew on. Now that you understand the why behind this one behavior, what other flaws in your life might actually be your mind's clever but maybe outdated ways of protecting you? If this gave you a new perspective, make sure you subscribe, because we're always digging into the hidden psychology behind the habits we all share.